Admiral Jake Morrison stood at the command deck of the USS Defiance and watched the massive alien ship approach Earth's outer defense grid. The ship was unlike anything humanity had ever seen before. It looked like a giant crystal structure that seemed to bend light around itself and stretch nearly 2 kilometers in length. For 3 days it had hung motionless at the edge of the solar system, broadcasting a single message in perfect English that said, "We wish to negotiate." Captain Lisa Harper walked up to Morrison with the latest intelligence reports in her hands. She looked worried as she spoke to him. "Sir, the linguistics team has analyzed their transmission patterns, and they have been monitoring our communications for decades and possibly even longer than that. They know everything about us and our society, and our weaknesses." The alien delegation consisted of 3 beings who called themselves the Hegemony. Their leader identified himself only as Prime Arbiter, and he appeared on the main screen of the United Nations Emergency Assembly. He was tall and looked almost ghostly, with pale blue skin and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of thousands of years. His voice carried an unsettling harmony when he spoke, and it made everyone who heard it feel uncomfortable. "People of Earth," the Prime Arbiter began as his image filled the massive screen in the assembly hall. "We represent 17 civilizations spanning this galaxy, and we have watched your species with great interest for many years. Your capacity for violence is remarkable, and your wars and your conquests and your relentless drive to dominate reminds us of ourselves from long ago when we were young." President Robert Kane sat flanked by world leaders from every major nation on Earth. They all listened intently as the alien continued speaking. "We offer you a choice, and this choice will determine the future of your entire species. Join the Hegemony as our military arm, and your species will be fed and housed and given purpose in the galaxy. In exchange, you will fight our wars and conquer our enemies and expand our dominion across the stars. The alternative is unfortunate for your people." The transmission ended with images that made everyone in the assembly hall gasp in horror. They showed worlds reduced to ash and entire civilizations that had been completely destroyed. Cities that once held millions of people were now nothing but smoking craters. The message was clear and terrifying. "Submit to us or be destroyed like these others before you." The emergency session that followed lasted 18 hours without a single break. Dr. Amanda Clark, who was Earth's leading expert on alien biology, presented her analysis to the assembled leaders. "Based on their technology and the images they have shown us, they possess the capability to eliminate all life on Earth within hours," she said with a grave voice. "However, there is something else that we need to consider carefully." Their offer suggests they need us specifically for our aggressive tendencies and our ability to fight. General Paul Stevens, who was head of the Global Defense Initiative, slammed his fist on the table, making everyone jump. "They want to turn us into their attack dogs," he said angrily. "They want to use our nature against other species who probably never hurt anyone and have done nothing wrong to deserve conquest." President Kane turned to face the assembly of world leaders. "We have 6 hours to respond to their ultimatum," he announced. "The vote is simple and straightforward. Do we accept their terms and become their slaves, or do we fight and face possible extinction?" The debate that followed was fierce and emotional. Some leaders argued for survival at any cost, saying that living as slaves was better than dying as free people. Others insisted that slavery, even comfortable slavery, was completely unacceptable for the human race. They said that humanity had fought too hard and for too long to gain their freedom to give it up now. Dr. Clark stood up and addressed the room with passion in her voice. "If we accept their offer, we become complicit in genocide against innocent species across the galaxy," she said. "If we refuse, we face extinction, but there is a third option that we should consider. We fight not because we are cornered like animals, but because it is who we are as human beings." The debate continued for hours, with leaders from every continent arguing about the future of humanity. Some spoke of their children and grandchildren, and what kind of world they wanted to leave behind. Others talked about the millions of people who had died throughout history fighting for freedom and independence. Colonel Danny Brooks, who was a veteran of the Mars colonial wars, was selected to deliver humanity's response to the aliens. As he stood before the alien transmission device, he thought of his daughter Katie, who was only 8 years old. He thought of the billions of people across Earth who had chosen dignity over survival in the vote that had just taken place. The Prime Arbiter's image flickered to life on the screen before him. His ancient eyes seemed to pierce right through Brooks as he spoke. "You have reached your decision?" he asked in that strange, harmonious voice. Brooks looked directly into those ancient, alien eyes and thought about everything that made humanity special. He thought about their art and music and literature. He thought about their capacity for love and sacrifice and their refusal to bow down to anyone. He thought about all the wars they had fought just to be free and all the people who had died for that freedom. He spoke for all of humanity when he said the single word that would change everything: fight. The Prime Arbiter's expression did not change, but there was something in his eyes that might have been surprise or maybe even respect. He had expected humans to choose survival like so many other species had done before them. He had expected them to bow down and accept their fate as servants of the hegemony. "Very well," he said after a long pause. "You have chosen your path, and now you must face the consequences of that choice. We gave you the opportunity to join us willingly, but you have refused our generous offer." The transmission ended, and the screen went dark, leaving the assembly hall in complete silence. Everyone knew that war was coming and that humanity would face an enemy unlike anything they had ever encountered before. But they also knew that they had made the right choice and that they would face whatever came next as free people. Brooks looked around the room at the faces of world leaders who had voted to fight instead of surrender. He saw fear in their eyes, but he also saw determination and courage. Humanity had spoken with one voice, and that voice had said, "Fight." The die was cast, and there was no going back now. Earth would face the might of 17 alien civilizations, but they would do it as free people who had chosen their own destiny. The war for humanity's freedom was about to begin, and it would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. The alien response came faster than anyone had expected. Within hours of humanity's defiant answer, the crystalline ship began moving toward Earth with terrifying speed. Energy beams carved through Earth's orbital defense platforms like they were made of paper, and the massive structures that had taken decades to build were destroyed in minutes. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance as alarms blared throughout the ship. The most advanced warship humanity had ever built was about to face an enemy that could destroy entire worlds. Morrison knew his ship would not survive this battle, but he also knew that someone had to make a stand. The USS Defiance lasted exactly 7 minutes against the alien vessel. Morrison's last transmission was heard across every remaining human ship and every defense station still operational. "Remember what we are fighting for," he said as his ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The Admiral and his crew of 800 brave souls were gone, but their sacrifice would not be forgotten. But humanity had not been sitting idle during the tense negotiations with the aliens. Dr. Amanda Clark's team had been working around the clock, analyzing every piece of data they could gather from the alien broadcasts. They had detected something very interesting in the transmissions that gave them hope. Dr. Helen Walsh was a brilliant physicist who had worked with Dr. Clark during the crisis. She had discovered that the alien technology relied on a specific quantum frequency that seemed to be the source of their power. Working together with a team of the world's best scientists, they had developed a theoretical countermeasure that might work against the aliens. The device they created was called a quantum disruptor, and it was completely untested. They had no idea if it would work or if it would just make the aliens angry. But it was their only hope, and they had to try something before Earth was completely destroyed. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Torres was chosen to pilot the experimental fighter called Phoenix. His mission was simple in concept but incredibly dangerous in execution. He had to get close enough to the massive alien vessel to deploy the quantum disruptor that Dr. Walsh had designed. The device was small enough to fit in his fighter, but getting close to the enemy ship would be nearly impossible. The alien ship's defenses seemed impenetrable as Torres watched from a distance. Every human ship that got within range was destroyed instantly by energy beams that moved faster than light. The aliens had shields that could deflect any weapon humanity possessed, and their hulls seemed to be made of some kind of living crystal that could repair itself, but Torres noticed something important as he studied the alien attack patterns. The energy weapons could not target multiple fast-moving objects at the same time. There was a brief delay between shots that might give him the opening he needed. He radioed the scattered remnants of the human fleet with a desperate plan. "All units converge on my position," he said over the communication system. "We are going to give them something they have never seen before and something they will never expect. We are going to show them what a human wave attack looks like." Captain Sophie Miller commanded the destroyer Vengeance, and she understood immediately what Torres was planning. "You want us to charge a ship that just destroyed our entire orbital defense grid and our most powerful warship?" she asked with disbelief in her voice. "That is exactly what I want," Torres replied with determination. "They expect us to retreat and to be logical about this situation? They expect us to run away like frightened animals? Let us be human instead and show them what we are really made of." 17 ships were all that remained of Earth's once mighty defense force. They were battered and damaged from the initial alien attack, but their crews were still ready to fight. These brave men and women knew they were probably going to die, but they also knew that their sacrifice might save their planet. The human ships screamed toward the alien vessel at full speed with their weapons blazing. The hegemony ship responded exactly as Torres had predicted and began destroying the attacking ships one by one. The alien weapons were incredibly powerful, but they could only target one ship at a time. Captain Miller's destroyer was the first to be destroyed, followed quickly by the cruiser Atlantic under Captain Jim Foster. The battleship Washington exploded in a ball of fire, taking Captain Mary Johnson and her crew with it. One by one, the human ships were picked off by the alien weapons, but they kept coming. Torres watched as his fellow humans died around him, but he kept flying toward his target. The quantum disruptor was armed and ready, but he had to get much closer to the alien ship. 16 ships had been destroyed in the desperate charge, but their sacrifice had created the opening he needed. The Phoenix slipped through the chaos of the battle and reached the alien hull. Torres could see the strange crystalline structure up close, and it was both beautiful and terrifying. The surface seemed to pulse with energy, and he could see strange patterns of light moving beneath the surface. He deployed the quantum disruptor and watched as the small device attached itself to the alien hull. For a moment nothing happened, and Torres thought their last hope had failed. Then the device activated and sent a pulse of energy through the alien ship. The crystalline vessel shuddered for the first time since the battle began. The energy pulse disrupted something important inside the ship, and several of the alien weapons went offline. It was not enough to destroy the massive vessel, but it was enough to hurt them badly. More importantly, it was enough to show the aliens that humanity would not surrender without a fight. The hegemony had expected quick submission like they had received from other species. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that was willing to die rather than submit. The alien ship began to retreat from Earth's orbit, but not before sending one final message. The Prime Arbiter's image appeared on screens across the planet, and his voice carried a tone that had not been there before. "Your species continues to surprise us," he said. "We will return with more ships and more weapons." "This is not over." Torres managed to return to Earth in his damaged fighter and was greeted as a hero. The quantum disruptor had worked better than anyone had hoped, and Dr. Walsh immediately began working on improved versions. Humanity had drawn first blood in what would become a long and terrible war. The battle for Earth was over, but the war for humanity's freedom had just begun. The aliens would return with reinforcements, but humans would be ready for them. They had proven that the hegemony could be hurt, and that was enough to give them hope for the future. The war that followed the first battle lasted 3 long and brutal years. The hegemony had expected humanity to surrender after seeing their superior technology and firepower, but instead they found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to give up. Humans did not retreat when they were outnumbered, and they did not surrender when they were outgunned. The aliens returned to Earth with a massive fleet of over 50 ships, but they found a planet that had been transformed into a fortress. Every major city had been turned into a military base and every civilian had been trained to fight. Children as young as 12 knew how to use weapons and elderly people in their 80s joined the resistance. Commander Ben Parker led the resistance cell on Mars where the aliens had established their first occupation force. His small group of fighters was outnumbered 100 to 1, but they had something the aliens could not understand. They were fighting for their families and their freedom and their very identity as human beings. The Martian resistance used guerrilla tactics that confused and frustrated the alien occupiers. They would strike at supply convoys and disappear into the red dust storms before the aliens could respond. Every ambush and every sabotage mission cost the hegemony dearly in both resources and morale. Parker's team had learned to use the alien quantum disruptors that Dr. Walsh had improved after the first battle. These weapons could disable alien equipment and even damage their crystalline ships if used correctly. The resistance fighters became experts at hit and run attacks that left the aliens wondering where the next strike would come from. On Earth, Dr. Amanda Clark had been captured during a raid on one of the alien research facilities. She was brought before the Prime Arbiter, who seemed genuinely curious about human behavior. The alien leader studied her with those ancient eyes as if she were some kind of fascinating specimen. "Why do you resist us?" the Prime Arbiter asked in his strange, harmonious voice. "We offer you peace and prosperity and purpose in the galaxy. We could give your species everything they need to survive and thrive. Why do you choose suffering and death instead?" Dr. Clark met his gaze without flinching, even though she knew he could kill her with a thought. "Because you are asking us to stop being human," she replied firmly. "Our violence and our aggression are not separate from our compassion and our creativity and our love. They are all part of the same fire that burns inside us." The Prime Arbiter tilted his head as if trying to understand her words. "You speak of violence as if it were something noble," he said. "We have seen what your species does to each other and to your own planet. How can you defend such destructive behavior?" Clark took a deep breath before answering. "You want to use that fire to burn others, but we would rather burn ourselves out than let you extinguish who we are," she said. "You see only our capacity for destruction, but you miss our capacity for sacrifice and for standing up to bullies like you." The alien leader was silent for a long moment as he processed her words. "Your species is truly unique," he finally said. "In 17 civilizations we have conquered, none have chosen extinction over submission. They all eventually saw the wisdom of joining us willingly." "Then you have not been asking the right questions," Clark replied with a small smile. "You have been offering slavery disguised as partnership and calling it wisdom. Real wisdom would be leaving us alone to find our own path in the galaxy." While Dr. Clark was having her philosophical debate with the Prime Arbiter, something amazing was happening across the galaxy. The hegemony subject species had been watching the human resistance with growing interest and hope. For the first time in centuries, they were seeing someone successfully fight back against their oppressors. The HFY were a proud warrior race that had been enslaved by the hegemony for over 2,000 years. They had tried to rebel many times, but had always been crushed by superior alien technology. Now they were learning about human tactics and adapting them to their own situation. The gentle Solari had never known violence before the hegemony conquered their peaceful world. They were a species of artists and philosophers who had believed that all conflicts could be resolved through discussion and compromise. But watching humanity fight inspired them to take up arms for the first time in their history. Messages were being secretly transmitted between the enslaved worlds using communication networks that the hegemony did not know existed. The word was spreading that if humans could choose freedom over survival, then maybe other species could do the same thing. On Earth, the resistance was growing stronger every day. Cities that had been bombed into rubble became underground fortresses, where humans lived and fought like their ancestors in the caves. They had learned to use the alien technology against them and were becoming more effective with each passing month. "Captain, Lisa Harper had taken command of the rebuilt human fleet. After Admiral Morrison's death, she led a new generation of ships that were specifically designed to fight the hegemony using improved quantum disruptors and human ingenuity. Her flagship was called the New Defiance in honor of the ship that had made the first sacrifice. The aliens were beginning to realize that conquering humanity was going to be much more difficult than they had expected. Every victory came at a terrible cost, and every occupied territory required massive resources to maintain. The humans were bleeding them slowly, but surely. General Paul Stevens had developed new training programs that taught human soldiers how to think like the aliens and anticipate their moves. He understood that the hegemony's greatest weakness was their inability to understand human psychology and their tendency to underestimate human determination. The war was changing both sides in ways that neither had expected. The humans were becoming more united and more focused on their goal of freedom. The aliens were beginning to question whether their empire was worth the cost of maintaining it through constant warfare. Dr. Walsh had made another breakthrough in quantum technology that allowed humans to jam alien communications and disrupt their coordination. This gave the Resistance a huge advantage because the aliens relied heavily on their ability to coordinate their forces across vast distances. The 3-year war had transformed humanity from a single-planet species into a galaxy-wide resistance movement. They had inspired other species to fight for their freedom and had shown that the hegemony was not invincible. The aliens were learning that some things were worth more than life itself. As the 3rd year of the war drew to a close, both sides were preparing for what everyone knew would be the final battle. The hegemony was gathering their full fleet for one last assault on Earth, while humanity was preparing to make their ultimate stand for freedom. The galaxy was on fire, and it was all humanity's fault. The hegemony had spent 3 years trying to crush the human rebellion, only to watch their entire empire begin to crumble from within. Species that had been enslaved for thousands of years were rising up across 17 different star systems, and the aliens were losing control. The HFY homeworld erupted in violence as the warrior race finally broke free from their chains. Commander Ben Parker had secretly traveled there during the 3rd year of the war to teach them human guerrilla tactics. The proud warriors had learned quickly and were now using their natural fighting abilities combined with human strategy to devastating effect. The HFY leader was a fierce female warrior named Zara, who had spent her entire life dreaming of freedom. She stood on the ruins of a hegemony command center and broadcast a message to her people. "Today we fight not just for ourselves, but for all the enslaved peoples of the galaxy," she declared. "The humans have shown us the way, and now we must follow their example." On the peaceful world of Solaris, the gentle artist, people had transformed into something their ancestors would not recognize. They had learned to make weapons from their sculpture tools and had turned their beautiful cities into fortresses. The Solari had never hurt anyone before, but they were learning that sometimes violence was necessary to protect what you loved. Dr. Amanda Clark had been moved to a prison ship where she was kept with other important human captives. But the aliens had made a mistake by putting all the resistance leaders together in one place. Dr. Clark used her knowledge of alien psychology to organize a breakout that would become legendary across the galaxy. The prison ship was called the Eternal Judgment, and it held over 2,000 human prisoners, including some of the most brilliant minds on Earth. Among them was Dr. Helen Walsh, who had continued working on quantum technology even while in captivity. She had figured out how to turn the ship's own power systems against their captors. The breakout began during what the aliens thought was a routine prisoner transport. Dr. Walsh activated a device she had built from stolen components, and the entire ship's quantum field collapsed. The alien guards were temporarily paralyzed while the humans remained unaffected because they did not depend on quantum technology. Captain Lisa Harper had been captured 3 months earlier during a failed attack on an alien supply depot. She took command of the breakout and led the prisoners in a coordinated assault on the ship's bridge. The aliens were completely unprepared for organized resistance from their captives. The humans seized control of the Eternal Judgment, and Dr. Clark sent a message to the Hegemony Command. "This is Dr. Amanda Clark speaking for all the free peoples of the galaxy," she said. "We have your prison ship and your guards, and we are not giving them back. If you want them, you will have to come and take them." The Prime Arbiter was furious when he received the message. He had never experienced such defiance from any species, and he was beginning to understand why his empire was falling apart. The humans were not just fighting for themselves, but were inspiring others to fight as well. The hegemony response was swift and brutal. They sent a full battle fleet to recapture the prison ship, but the humans had been expecting this. Dr. Walsh had modified the ship's weapon systems, and Captain Harper had positioned it near an asteroid field, where they could use the rocks as cover. The battle was fierce, but the humans held their position. They had learned to fight dirty and to use every advantage they could find. The asteroid field became a graveyard for alien ships as human ingenuity once again proved superior to alien technology. Meanwhile, on Earth, the Resistance was preparing for what everyone knew would be the final battle. General Paul Stevens had received reports that the hegemony was gathering their entire fleet for one last assault on humanity's homeworld. Every ship they had would be coming, and it would be the largest space battle in galactic history. The humans had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. Every factory on Earth was producing weapons and ships, and every person who could hold a weapon was ready to fight. Children had been evacuated to underground shelters while adults prepared to make their last stand. President Robert Kane addressed the world for what might be the last time. "We knew this day would come," he said from his bunker beneath the ruins of Washington. "We knew that our choice to fight would lead to this moment. But we also knew that some things are worth dying for, and freedom is one of them." The alien fleet that approached Earth was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Over 300 ships of various sizes and designs represented the full might of the hegemony. They had come to end the human rebellion once and for all, and to make an example that would keep other species from following humanity's path, but the humans were ready for them. Every orbital platform had been rebuilt and reinforced with quantum disruptors. Every moon and asteroid in the solar system had been turned into a weapons platform. The entire human fleet was waiting in formation around Earth like a protective shield. Commander Ryan Torres was now Admiral Torres, and he commanded the rebuilt human fleet from the bridge of the USS Vengeance. He had survived the first battle 3 years ago and had learned everything he could about fighting the aliens. His ships were faster and more maneuverable than anything the hegemony had faced before. The Solari had sent a small fleet to help humanity, even though they were still learning how to fight. Their ships were beautiful works of art that had been converted into weapons of war. The gentle people had decided that helping humanity was worth the risk of destruction. The HFY warriors had also sent ships to join the final battle. Their vessels were crude but effective, and their crews were eager to fight alongside the humans who had inspired their own rebellion. Zara herself commanded the HFY fleet and was looking forward to facing the hegemony in open combat. As the alien fleet entered Earth's solar system, the stage was set for the battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. Humanity had started this war with a single word, and now they would finish it with the help of allies they had never expected to have. The Prime Arbiter looked at the combined fleet facing him and realized that the humans had done something no other species had ever accomplished. They had united the galaxy against the hegemony and had shown that freedom was worth any price. The final battle for the galaxy began at dawn on Earth as the massive hegemony fleet entered the solar system. 300 alien ships of every size and design moved in perfect formation toward the blue planet that had caused them so much trouble. They had come to end the human rebellion once and for all and restore order to their crumbling empire. Admiral Ryan Torres stood on the bridge of the USS Vengeance and watched the enemy approach. His fleet was outnumbered 3-1, but every ship was crewed by people who had chosen to fight rather than surrender. Next to the human vessels were the beautiful art ships of the Solari and the crude but deadly warships of the HFY warriors. The battle began when the aliens opened fire at maximum range, hoping to destroy the human fleet before they could get close enough to use their quantum disruptors. Energy beams lit up the darkness of space as the two forces clashed in the most important battle in galactic history. Captain Jerry Mitchell commanded a converted mining ship called the Earth's Pride that had been fitted with weapons and armor. His crew consisted of miners and engineers who had volunteered to fight even though they had never been soldiers. They knew their ship was not designed for combat, but they also knew that every vessel would be needed in this fight. The human strategy was simple, but effective. They would use their speed and maneuverability to get close to the alien ships where their quantum disruptors would be most effective. The aliens expected them to fight at long range like civilized species, but humans had never been very civilized when their survival was at stake. Colonel Sarah Williams commanded the rebuilt USS Defiance and led the first wave of human ships into the heart of the alien formation. Her ship had been equipped with the most advanced quantum disruptors that Dr. Helen Walsh could design, and she was determined to make the aliens pay for every meter of space. The Solari ships moved like dancers through the battlefield, using their incredible grace to avoid the alien weapons. These gentle people had learned to fight, but they had not forgotten their artistic nature. Their ships wove patterns in space that confused the alien targeting systems while delivering devastating attacks. Zara led her Cathai warriors in a direct assault on the largest alien ships. The warrior race had waited 2,000 years for this chance to face their oppressors in open battle, and they were not going to waste it. Their battle cries could be heard over the communication channels. As they charged into the enemy formation, the Prime Arbiter watched the battle from his flagship and could not believe what he was seeing. 3 different species were working together to fight his forces, and they were actually winning. The humans had somehow united natural enemies and turned them into allies through their example of defiance. Dr. Amanda Clark had escaped from the prison ship and was now coordinating the resistance from a hidden base on the moon. She watched the battle through telescopes and sent tactical information to the various fleet commanders. Her knowledge of alien psychology was helping the human forces predict enemy movements. The quantum disruptors were working better than anyone had hoped. Every time a human ship got close enough to an alien vessel, the weapons caused massive damage to their crystalline hulls. The aliens were discovering that their supposedly invincible technology had a fatal weakness that humans had learned to exploit. Mitchell's mining ship was damaged, but still fighting when he received orders to ram the alien command ship. His crew voted unanimously to accept the suicide mission, and they charged directly at the Prime Arbiter's flagship. Mitchell's last words were broadcast across the entire fleet as his ship exploded against the alien hull. For Earth and for freedom, he shouted as the Earth's Pride delivered its final blow. The explosion tore a massive hole in the alien flagship and sent the Prime Arbiter's bridge spinning into space. The alien leader survived, but his ship was crippled and his authority was shattered. The tide of battle began to turn as more alien ships fell to the combined assault. The hegemony forces had superior technology, but they were fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. Humans and their allies were using every dirty trick they could think of. To win, Dr. Walsh had developed a new type of quantum weapon that could disable entire groups of alien ships at once. When the weapon was deployed, it sent a pulse through space that caused every hegemony vessel within range to lose power. The aliens found themselves helpless as human ships moved in for the kill. The Solari had contributed their own innovation to the battle by creating beautiful but deadly art installations in space. These sculptures were actually advanced weapons that could fire from multiple directions at once. The aliens were being destroyed by works of art, and it was driving them crazy. The Cathai warriors had boarded several alien ships and were fighting hand-to-hand combat in the corridors. Their natural fighting ability combined with human tactics made them nearly unstoppable in close quarters. The aliens had never faced such fierce resistance from their former slaves. As the battle raged, President Robert Kane emerged from his bunker to address the galaxy. "This is humanity speaking to all free peoples everywhere," he said. "Today we fight not just for our own freedom, but for the freedom of every species in the galaxy. Today we show the universe that no one has the right to enslave another." The Prime Arbiter tried to rally his remaining forces, but it was too late. Half of his fleet had been destroyed, and the rest were in full retreat. The mighty hegemony that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years was crumbling before his eyes. Admiral, Torres received a communication from the alien leader requesting a ceasefire. The Prime Arbiter's image appeared on the screen, and he looked older and more tired than ever before. Enough, he said simply. Your species has proven its point, and we acknowledge your victory. We withdraw our forces and recognize the sovereignty of all free peoples. Colonel Williams replied for all of humanity. When she said we never wanted to prove a point, we just wanted to be left alone to live our lives as free people. You could have had peace if you had simply asked instead of demanding. The war was over, and the galaxy would never be the same. The hegemony empire collapsed as species after species declared their independence and joined the new Galactic Federation of Free Peoples. Humanity had started the revolution with a single word and had ended it by freeing the entire galaxy. Dr. Clark became the first human ambassador to the Galactic Council and delivered a speech that would be remembered for generations. We did not fight because we are violent, she said. We fought because we are free, and we believe that freedom is the birthright of every thinking being in the universe.